Hello and welcome to Sleepy Scientist. I'm glad you're here, whether you've had a long day, a busy mind, or you simply love falling asleep to the sound of science. Tonight we journey together across a vision of Earth that may seem strange, stark, and yet hauntingly beautiful, a world where all the water has vanished. You'll glide over barren ocean beds, wander through bone-dry forests, and drift above continents that crackle and flake under the sun. It's not a disaster tale. It's a story of transformation of secrets hidden beneath waves, and the mysteries revealed when blue turns to beige. Imagine Earth not as we know it, but as it would be if the oceans were drained like a bathtub and clouds ceased to form in the sky. And as we float into this alternate Earth, I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from and what time is it there? Maybe it's just past midnight, or maybe the morning sun is peeking in. Let me know in the comments if you're feeling cozy enough to share. If you enjoy these sleepy explorations, I'd be so grateful if you gave the video a little like and tap that subscribe button. It helps more sleepy scientists like you find their way here, and it means I can keep making more of these journeys for you now. So now, let's take a breath, let your shoulders drop, and picture Earth as it stands under a sunlit silence. At first, from space, Earth seems oddly the same, still round, still spinning. But then the blue is gone. No shimmer of seas, no whirls of white clouds swirling in motion. Instead, it's a matte sphere of dust and exposed crust colored in rusts, ochres, and faded browns. The continents look swollen, unchained by coastlines. And where oceans once ruled, now lie vast chasms and ridges wrinkled like ancient skin. You drift down lower. Where the Pacific Ocean once stretched wide and deep, now there is a colossal bowl, its floor visible at last. The mid-ocean ridge, normally hidden beneath miles of water, rises like a spine, splitting the seabed in half. You follow its jagged backbone, weaving through massive fault lines and ridges. Once hydrothermal vents puffed warmth from beneath. Now they sit like chimneys of silence. Without water, the sea's pressure is gone. The Earth's crust creaks just slightly. It sighs. Everything that once rested beneath kilometers of ocean has been exposed to open-air air that is now crisp, dry, and unnervingly still. You ask yourself, what lived down here? What secrets slept beneath these oceans? The answer: millions of years of life, layers upon layers of sediment, fossils, shipwrecks, thermal vents. All of it now bleaching under sunlight. And without that water, sunlight doesn't scatter the same. The skies above these barren ocean floors shimmer strangely, less blue, more copper. The atmosphere is thinner, hotter during the day, colder at night. And below, the sea's old bed begins to bake. Elsewhere, continents extend unnaturally. Australia's coasts have pushed outward. Asia's undersea shelf now stretches into ghostly territory, places once home to coral reefs, now chalk-white ruins of polyps and bone. And in the tropics, the Caribbean Sea reveals its ridges and hollows. The Bermuda Triangle becomes just a triangle of land. Even the Mariana Trench, Earth's deepest point, now yawns like a wound. Nearly 11 kilometers deep, this gash into Earth's surface is more vertical than the Grand Canyon, more ancient than most mountains. And with the oceans gone, it stands uncovered, moaning quietly under gravity's weight. There is no tide anymore. The moon, still loyally orbiting, no longer pulls at Earth's oceans. The relationship is strangely quiet now. The moon watches unneeded as Earth adjusts to its new look. And Earth is heavy. The oceans were about 1.4 billion cubic kilometers of water. With them gone, Earth has lost a great deal of surface mass. That imbalance ripples through tectonic plates, through gravitational fields, even affecting Earth's rotational wobble. You might even feel a subtle tremble as the crust readjusts, no longer softened by waves, no longer cushioned by liquid pressure. And you notice something else: the absence of sound, no waves crashing, no seagulls crying, just the wind, dry and untempered, whistling across exposed ocean basins. It's a lonely beauty, but you're not afraid, because in this silence, in this vision of an earth no longer cloaked in water, there is still story, still geology, still memory in the stone. You run your fingers along ancient seafloor ridges, each groove telling tales of shifting continents and submarine volcanoes. And as you move slowly, gently toward what used to be a shoreline, you begin to sense what comes next. This is only the beginning. Now you rise slowly, weightless and unhurried above the place where the Pacific once shimmered. You leave behind the rippled bones of a vanished ocean and begin to explore what's been hiding underneath all along. Without water, the ocean floor no longer plays the background role, it takes center stage. The planet has peeled back its blue mask to reveal a rugged, contorted theater of ancient terrain. It's not flat or featureless, as one might guess from the way we once sailed over it. No, it's a wild maze of underwater mountains, taller than the Rockies, stretching in long, broken chains like submerged spines. You float above the mid-Atlantic ridge, which once lay hidden deep beneath the Atlantic's surface. Now it's a jagged mountainous seam, running through what used to be sea, like a stitched scar across a blue canvas. Except the blue is gone. The canvas is cracked earth and exposed magma rock. The ridge snakes from the Arctic all the way down to near Antarctica, carving a divide that once birthed new crust, spreading continents apart slowly, about as fast as your fingernails grow. With no water to weigh it down, this ridge lifts slightly, subtly shifting its spine. Rocks crack like old porcelain. Steam seeps from deep vents that once hissed into high-pressure darkness. Now exposed to sunlight, they hiss into the dry, open air like sleepy dragons confused by the sudden change. You pass remnants of abyssal plains, those vast, flat undersea deserts. Once teeming with microscopic life and ancient ooze, now they resemble great quiet parking lots of dust and compacted silt. Small hills called seamounts pepper the plain like freckles. Some are dead volcanoes long forgotten, while others are newborns frozen mid-eruption by the disappearance of their watery curtain. Can you imagine the silence here? Try asking yourself, if you stood on the floor of the Atlantic, in a place where blue, once pressed down from miles above, what would it feel like to breathe in that dry, ancient dust? What would it smell like? Would the earth remember being covered? It probably would. And now your path takes you lower still into the trenches. These are Earth's wrinkles, places where one tectonic plate dives beneath another. They're not smooth, they're brutal. If the oceans once softened them like a velvet blanket over a jagged couch, now the blanket's been ripped away and the hard angles remain. The Mariana Trench, nearly 11,000 meters deep, now gapes under a sun it hasn't seen in hundreds of millions of years. No longer cloaked in midnight darkness, its walls shimmer faintly with minerals. Tiny bits of bioluminescent dust, leftovers from vanished sea creatures, glitter faintly before crumbling under heat. You float down into this canyon and the pressure is strangely gone. Without water above, the crushing weight that once made these depths almost mythic has lifted. And yet the trench still feels heavy, psychologically, emotionally, as if it knows too much. Would anything survive here? That question hangs in the air, unanswered. For now. But above the trenches something else stirs. Submarine volcanoes freed from their watery prisons begin to behave differently. Their eruptions become more dramatic, less muffled, more aggressive. Steam no longer forms pillows of lava. Instead, hot rock flows freely across the seabed, etching fresh patterns into terrain that hasn't seen sky since dinosaurs first walked the earth. You pass one such volcano near the East Pacific Rise. Its vent glows faintly. Sulfur crusts its edges. A faint tremor travels through the surrounding rock like the planet clearing its throat. And you wonder again, what did we never see simply because it was underwater? There are underwater caves miles long where strange blind fish once drifted and colonies of bacteria fed on sulfur instead of sunlight. Now with the sea gone, these systems collapse in on themselves. The ceiling no longer supported by pressure crumbles, and the caves go dark not from water, but from dust. Even old shipwrecks, galleons, submarines, lost cargo ships lie scattered across the newly exposed seabed like forgotten toys. Their wooden hulls dry, brittle, cracking. The sea once preserved them in stillness. Now they erode faster under the open air. And all around, tiny shells once home to creatures no larger than grains of rice layer the floors in endless dunes of calcium. This white powdery carpet speaks of past abundance. Plankton blooms, whale songs, storms, seasons, all gone, but remembered here in sediment that now glints like crushed bone. Strangely, it's beautiful. Yes, the sea is gone, but what it has left behind is a museum, silent, vast, and breathtaking. And you floating through it are the lone visitor. You turn now toward the former continental shelves, the gentle slopes that once held coral reefs and gentle lagoons. Now dry and cracking, they still show hints of old life. Fossilized coral, hollow barnacles, driftwood turned to stone. You wonder if someone stood here long enough, could they hear echoes of waves, or would the silence swallow even memory? And with that you drift up higher back toward where the coastlines once began. You're not done yet. Earth has more to show you. You hover now at the ghost edge of a once bustling shoreline. Once where you float, waves lapped with a gentle hiss. Salt clung to the wind, gulls cried, and tide pools danced with life. But all of that is gone now. The tide no longer exists. The sea no longer pulls back or rolls in. Instead, there's a brittle hush where movement used to live. The rivers that once fed these coasts have dried. Their mouths gape like forgotten songs, cracked, yawning deltas abandoned by the currents that carved them. You can trace their paths inland, where blue once curled its fingers into green valleys. Now those fingers have turned skeletal, etched in dust and emptiness. You decide to follow one. A wide riverbed stretches ahead, the former Amazon. Without water, it looks impossibly vast. A canyon more than 1,000 kilometers long, braided with fossilized tributaries. It's as though some ancient hand scraped deep lines across South America and then never returned to fill them. The riverbanks are choked with silt turned to powder. You can see ghost imprints where boats once moored, where roots once held fast, where mudskippers and herons waded through the shallows. All of it now silenced. What does a river become without water? A memory, a path, a vein. But even veins, empty as they may be, still carry history. The Mississippi, the Nile, the Yangtze, they all remain. Not as rivers, but as monuments, etched into the earth's skin, winding, looping scars left by something essential now gone. You float gently over Lake Victoria's basin. What was once the largest lake in Africa is now a blistered plain rimmed in dusty cliffs. The lake bed is dotted with small craters, places where water pooled longest before evaporating into memory. Fish once darted through this space. Hippos once bathed here. Now all that's left is cracked mud that curls upward like brittle parchment. Do you feel it? That ache? You're not just seeing what's missing, you're feeling the echo of it. as if the earth itself still expects the water to return, still bracing for the splash. Further north, you find what's left of the Aral Sea, though in truth, it had already begun to vanish before this dry transformation. Over the last century, human activity shrank it drastically, and now in a world without water, it's not even a ghost, it's a fossil. You can see the rusting hulls of ships resting on sand where children once swam. The shoreline has retreated miles away now, non-existent. Dust storms swirl over what used to be a watery horizon. This is not just the death of water. It's the disappearance of memory, of culture, of navigation, of flow. Lakes once served as mirrors for the sky, calm, reflective surfaces that captured sunrise and moonlight alike. Now those mirrors are shattered, dried into fragments that no longer reflect anything but heat. And as you rise, you spot rivers on every continent turn to dry veins. The Ganges curls across India like a silver snake stripped of its shimmer. The Danube no longer serenades Europe's old capitals. The Colorado winds through the Grand Canyon, but without its river, the canyon now seems too wide, too still. Even the waterfalls, Niagara, Angel Falls, Victoria, are now only scars and cliffsides. Their music silenced, their spray a forgotten dream. You may wonder, does the land remember how it felt to be carved by water? Of course it does. The stones remember the pressure, the lapping, the endless motion. And they still bear the shape of it. The grooves, the slopes, the plunge pools, they're still there. Only now, the movement has gone. And yet, somewhere deep beneath these riverbeds and lake beds, water still hides. For now, tiny pockets clinging inside porous rock, microscopic droplets locked inside crystals, buried aquifers that haven't yet realized the surface has forgotten them. We'll find those soon. But for now, you follow one last dry river toward what used to be a coastline. It leads you to a place where the forest once pressed up against the sea, where mangroves tangled their roots into mud. Now the trees are brittle, their roots exposed. The soil is cracked, and a strange white crust has begun to form, a ghostly rim of salt left behind as the final water fled into vapor. You reach down, brush it with your fingertips. It flakes away. Light as ash, quiet as snow. And again the silence wraps around you. No frogs, no buzzing mosquitoes, no wind whistling through reeds, just the creak of dried branches and the pulse of your own breath in this waterless world. Still, the earth is not angry, just different. It does not mourn like we do. It simply adapts. And as you rise slowly toward the cloudless sky, you begin to notice something else that's changed, something higher, something colder. The sky. Above you now, the sky stretches on and on, a vast pale dome, somehow more distant than you remember. With the oceans gone, it's not just the land that has transformed. The air has changed too. You feel it the moment you drift higher, carried by a slow, dry wind. There's something missing in the way it moves, something hushed in the way it breathes. Gone are the clouds. They were once the sky's poetry, billowing, drifting, tumbling like daydreams across the firmament. Now, without water, to evaporate and rise, they've vanished. No cotton towers of cumulus, no veils of cirrus, not even a lonely wisp above the horizon. The sky is dry, bare, and pale, almost shy without its cloud cover. Without evaporation, there is no cycle, no water vapor to gather and condense, no droplets to become raindrops, no gentle mists to fall on mountaintops. What was once a soft and endless exchange between sea and sky has been interrupted perhaps forever. You glance upward, and the color of the sky has changed too. Without moisture to scatter the sunlight, the blue becomes thinner. a washed-out hue that leans toward white at noon and bruises toward violet in the evenings. The atmosphere feels thinner, less protective. The ozone remains, but without clouds. To reflect sunlight, the planet warms faster by day and cools more swiftly at night. The extremes begin to stack, temperature rising and falling with the unfiltered pulse of the sun. Do you notice how quiet the wind has become? Wind is shaped by differences of temperature, of pressure, of moisture. But now, without the oceans feeding warmth into the air, the balance has unraveled. The great convection cells that once circled Earth like sleeping dragons have gone still. No more Hadley cells carrying tropical moisture to the deserts. No more polar cells spinning cold air toward the equator. You might remember the names of these winds: the trade winds, the westerlies, the jet stream. Each of them was a ribbon wrapped around the Earth, moving air and water together like dancers. But now they are retired, still, waiting for a partner that no longer arrives. Rain no longer falls. Can you imagine that? Not just a drought, but a complete and total silence of the rain. No thunderheads building over the savannah. No summer storms rolling through fields. No drizzle tracing lazy lines down a window pane. Without clouds, there's no lightning, no thunder, no scent of petrichor rising from hot pavement. The whole emotional vocabulary of weather has changed. You might ask what fills the space where clouds used to drift. The answer is nothing. And yet the absence is not hostile. It's calm. Still. Just very empty. Like a theater before the curtain lifts. You feel as though something might appear, some last cloud, stubborn and soft, but it never does. You drift higher up toward where planes once flew, but the upper atmosphere feels different now. Cooler in some places, warmer in others. Without clouds to moderate the planet's surface temperature, Earth becomes patchy, like a quilt left out in the wind, hot in some squares, cold in others. The greenhouse gases are still there, carbon dioxide, methane, but without water vapor, their effect is dulled. Water was always Earth's most abundant and powerful greenhouse gas. Without it, the warming slows. But the chaos continues. Because weather needs water. With no clouds, there are no hurricanes, no typhoons to twist over oceans that no longer exist. The great storm systems that once carved paths of fury across the globe are gone. Calm in their own way, but unsettlingly so. Even snow is impossible now. Snow was the sky's quietest lullaby, falling in crystals so soft you could forget they were frozen. But snow needs moisture. Snow needs clouds, and clouds need water. So you look across the mountains once topped in white, now naked and dry. Even at the poles, the snow doesn't fall. Ice still clings for now, but it is not renewed. Instead, the air is filled with dust. Fine particles carried by wind that no longer follows old rules. With the vegetation gone and the soil exposed, Earth has become a dusty world. You can see it sweeping across continents, tan clouds rising from dry plains, stretching into the sky like ghost rivers. And in this dust, strange things happen. Sunsets become sharper, redder. The dust scatters the light differently, sometimes making the sky feel closer than it really is. The sun, especially at twilight, seems larger, more distorted. You wonder if it's staring back. At night, stars shine with unusual clarity. With no clouds and reduced moisture, the atmosphere no longer blurs the cosmos. The Milky Way glows with a quiet pride, its patterns crisp and clean. Perhaps this is one gift in the absence of sky more honest. You find yourself asking, what would the first humans say? Standing in a sky like this, would they find it beautiful? Would they feel afraid? Would they miss the clouds? Or would they forget? You drift lower again, following the breeze back toward the surface. Your lungs ache for humidity. The moisture in your breath lingers longer in the air, as though surprised to have nowhere to go. And beneath you, the plants and animals wait, or rather, what remains of them. They too are affected by this silence in the sky. But we'll reach them soon. For now, remember the sky is not angry, just dry and quiet and still. Now you glide gently over the land, drifting lower once more. But where there should be forests whispering in the wind and green fields soaking up the sun, you find something else entirely: stillness. Not a peaceful stillness, but the kind that follows absence, like a play without actors, or a symphony after the instruments have fallen silent. Without water, vegetation falters first. You can see it in the trees. Leaves curled inward, brittle as old parchment. The great tropical jungles, once pulsing with life and color, have faded into dry husks. Trees that once drank gallons of water daily now stand skeletal, their roots exposed like fingers grasping at dry air. You float above what used to be the Amazon rainforest, sometimes called the lungs of the earth. Now it barely breathes. The canopy has collapsed. The rich green layers have turned to layers of dust, pale and yellowed. Vines, once thick with moisture and humming with insects, have shriveled into wiry threads. Even the soil itself is changing. Without water, topsoil turns to powder, too light to anchor anything. With no rain to bind it, or roots to hold it in place, the earth's skin is being lifted, scattered by the wind. Dust storms bloom from the ground like ghost flowers sweeping across the plains, blotting out the sun in sepia waves. You wonder, if you scooped up a handful of that dust, would you find ancient seeds sleeping within? Could they ever wake again? Perhaps. Some seeds can lie dormant for decades, waiting patiently for moisture. But they wait in vain here. You drift now over grasslands once seas of motion, golden and green. Without dew or rainfall, the grasses have vanished, leaving behind cracked plains where even weeds refuse to grow. The animals who once grazed here, bison, antelope, elephants, have fled or fallen. A few hardy creatures remain hidden in burrows, slowing their hearts to conserve every drop. The desertification is total. And yet, it isn't all gray. You spot strange new colors blooming in the dryness. Lichens painting stones with soft orange fuzz. Hardy succulents curled tightly into themselves like sleeping beetles. Some desert plants have found ways to cheat thirst, gathering moisture from the air or storing it in swollen stems. Their survival is a kind of quiet defiance. Then there are the trees that remember water. You hover over a stand of ancient baobabs, those thick-trunked guardians of the African savanna. Even now, their bark feels spongy, their silhouettes defiant. They stored water deep in their cores, preparing for the worst. And now the worst has come. Some still stand. Others have burst from within their reserves, long since emptied. Their trunks split open like forgotten barrels, leaking dust instead of life. You begin to ask yourself, what makes a plant resilient? Is it the shape of its leaf, the depth of its root, or something more, an instinct, a stubbornness? In old alpine regions where mosses and mountain flowers once grew in the cool moisture of glacier-fed streams, you find only rock now. The permafrost has retreated, taking with it whole ecosystems. No more tundra blossoms, no more icy springs gurgling under ferns. The boreal forests, too, are silent. Spruce, pine, and birch once stretched for thousands of kilometers across the north. Now they stand like tired soldiers after a long campaign, bark peeling needles, brown trunks leaning. Some trees collapse in dominoes. Without the anchoring of moist soil, roots fail. Entire forests fall not to axe or fire, but simply gravity. You pass over former wetlands next places where cattails once danced in the breeze and frogs sang lullabies under moonlight. They are now salt flats and baked clay. The mud has hardened into ceramic tiles, some fractured by heat into geometric patterns. A beautiful kind of ruin. Even the mighty mangroves are gone. These trees, once at the front line between sea and land, have withered. Their roots, once submerged and home to fish nurseries, now sprawl uselessly in open air, dry and vulnerable, like lungs turned inside out. You pause to take it in. Earth's great lungs, Earth's green robe stripped bare. And yet, you spot something curious, a splash of green. Against all odds, life persists. A patch of moss hugs a shadowed rock face. A cactus flower blooms under a cloudy moon. A stubborn vine winds up the leg of a collapsed telephone pole, grasping toward a sky that no longer offers rain. They remind you of something important. Life doesn't vanish all at once. It contracts, it shelters, it waits, and deep below the surface, seeds remain. Spores sleep. Pollen drifts like golden whispers in the wind, unsure of what to land on, but floating anyway. You ask, could these scraps begin again? Could green return, not without water? But maybe someday. For now, the earth wears a softer palette. Golds, browns, reds, ochres, and rusts. A kind of subdued beauty. No longer lush, but solemn. No longer loud, but dignified. The plants are quiet, but not gone. And you, gentle observer, drift on. Next you'll meet the ones who used to walk between the trees. You glide now over silent cities, their outlines softened by dust and time. Once people bustled through these spaces, carrying umbrellas in rain, fanning themselves in summer sun, waking to the scent of wet pavement after a storm. Now they move no more. Without water, humanity has been forced to retreat to adapt, or, in many places, to vanish. The signs of human absence begin subtly. The fountains are dry. Public pools are cracked and sun-bleached. Canals lie empty, their stone beds exposed like old bones. Boats sit on grass, stranded where lakes used to be. You drift into a city center. Perhaps it's Rome, or Chicago, or Jakarta. The geography no longer matters as much. The silence is the same. Without rain, even the smallest human habits become impossible. You notice a garden now dust, a rooftop water tank split and crumbling, a window box filled with brittle stems, their petals long since scattered by a dry breeze. Humans once engineered their whole civilizations around water, aqueducts, dams, wells, reservoirs. Cities formed at the mouths of rivers, in fertile valleys along coasts kissed by tides. When water left, many of those cities became hollow. What happens when showers stop running, when crops no longer grow, when drinking water becomes more precious than gold? Some humans adapted. You see signs of their resilience. Solar stills built into rooftops, condensation traps curled around shaded spaces, structures made to harvest dew. Tiny amounts, but enough to matter. They tried, didn't they? You float over an abandoned research station tucked into a canyon where heat gathers like a sleeping lion. Solar panels line the hillsides. Vats, domes, and narrow tubes crisscross the valley, all part of a desalination experiment long abandoned. You imagine the last drops collected here were shared slowly, carefully. Do you wonder how long people could last with no rainfall, no replenishment, only recycling and cleverness? In some places they turned underground. You drift to a desert plain where the outlines of subterranean cities remain. Digging deep into the bedrock, these communities sought to escape the brutal surface. They tapped into ancient aquifers, rationed everything. They lit their world with mirrors and focused solar beams, keeping plants alive with precious droplets. These people didn't thrive, but they endured for a time. Elsewhere, humans chased clouds that never came. In Asia, you pass over mountain villages that once relied on glacial melt. With glaciers gone, they tried to capture moisture from fog. But fog, too, needs water. And now, it has vanished. You pass through ghost towns, cities wrapped in dust. Sand creeps through empty windows, stacking in corners like snowfall once did. Streets buckle under heat. Billboards still stand faded, offering drinks that no longer exist. A vending machine hums faintly, waiting for coins no one carries anymore. And yet even here, humans left their mark. Messages scrawled in chalk, arrows pointing underground. Diagrams of water, still scratched into walls. Knowledge shared in case someone else came looking. In some cities, you find greenhouses wrapped in reflective foil, self-contained biospheres once designed for Mars. These bubble domes became Earth's last experimental farms. Some still hold a breath of green. Most do not. You ask, did humanity leave this world? Did they launch arcs into orbit, chasing ice among the stars? Or did they fade quietly like the rivers? You find clues in the machines. Orbiters still drift above. Satellites blink out faint signals. A rover crosses cracked terrain, dutifully recording dust patterns, solar intensity temperatures. No one watches, but it carries on like a pet, waiting at a door long after its owner is gone. Still, not all humans left. In the deep caves near geothermal vents in sealed biodomes, small communities persist. You find a hill where an old windmill still turns slowly, drawing vapor from buried air pockets. Inside, sensors hum. A child's handprint is smeared on a dusty glass pane. There is hope in that smudge. You float on. What did humans drink, you wonder? In some places, they harvested water from stone, pulling microdroplets from underground rock, using heat and pressure. Elsewhere, they brewed water from chemicals, reclaiming every molecule from breath sweat waste. No longer was water casually poured or sprayed. It was measured, blessed, whispered to. Every cup held gravity. You pause above a sculpture in the middle of an empty town square. It's not bronze or marble, but a stack of empty water bottles crushed, fused together. A strange monument. A reminder. Rain once fell here. Rivers once sang. Even laughter sounded different when water still moved through the world. But people laughed anyway, until they couldn't. And yet, humanity is stubborn, a survivor, like that vine you saw earlier. And somewhere deep below the surface, or hidden in high-altitude labs, a few voices may still be whispering, still dreaming of how to bring water back. Or at least how to remember it. You rise again. Earth without water is not just quieter. It's more vulnerable, weatherless, breathless, but also beautiful, in a strange, humbling way. And ahead of you, beneath your drifting shadow, the animals await. Beneath your gentle glide, a strange kind of quiet kingdom stretches out, one ruled not by predators or herds, but by absence. And yet look closer. Even in this thirsty world, creatures move. They twitch beneath rocks, flit through shadow curl into sleep beneath a crust of dust. Without water, the animal world has shifted, adapted, or vanished. You begin with the great ones, the elephants, whales, bears, lions. Those massive beings once sustained by rivers, oceans, and snow. You search for their silhouettes across the plains, but they are gone now. The planet simply could not hold them without moisture. Bodies that once radiated strength and warmth now only exist in your memory and perhaps in some genetic archive deep underground. But you don't feel lonely, because others remain. You descend to desert floors, and there you find them, the small, the clever, the quiet. Rodents with fur like dust and eyes like beads. Lizards with mirrored scales that reflect the sun. Insects that breathe slow and dream deep. Some burrow into cool soil, others drink dew from their own skin. They are each of them a miracle. You watch a beetle march up a dune before standing perfectly still. Then it lifts its back toward the breeze. Tiny grooves on its shell catch passing vapor. A drop forms. The beetle drinks, then walks on. Life finds a way. In the shadows of canyons, a pale salamander clings to a stone. It hasn't seen light in weeks. But in its cool nook, water lingers in tiny pockets. A remnant. Enough. You wonder, does it dream of streams? Even the birds have changed. The great flocks no longer cross skies in vast formations. But a few species have grown smaller, their wings sharper, their thirst less urgent. You spot a shrike perched on a wire, feathers sleek, eyes calm. It hasn't bathed in years, but its rhythm continues. Many animals have shrunk, literally smaller bodies, retain moisture better. A kind of natural selection shaped by thirst. Some mammals now weigh a tenth of what their ancestors did. Their heartbeats slow, their days stretch long and sleepy. And then there are the nocturnals. With no clouds to shield the sun, heat becomes brutal. So the animals have retreated into the night. That's when Earth hums softly again. You hear it, the scraping of claws, the flutter of wings, the whisper of paws in dust. By moonlight, creatures emerge, some that were always shy, others that have become shy out of necessity. You catch a glimpse of a fox darting into a hollow log. A pair of glowing eyes blink from under a bush that once bore berries. The desert air feels less cruel at night. It welcomes these secret lives. What about marine animals, you wonder? With oceans gone, sea life has all but vanished. Coral reefs are fossilized sculptures, now beautiful skeletons of former color. Fish whales, cephalopods. They are memories etched into ancient stone. Yet in the deepest cracks of Earth's crust, near hydrothermal vents, microbial life still stirs. Bacteria that never needed sunlight. Creatures that drink chemicals and cling to rock. They are the oldest, and perhaps the last. Even in dried riverbeds, you may find the eggs of shrimp frogs, insects waiting. Suspended in time, encased in silence, but alive. Isn't that something? You pause over an old zoo. The cages are empty now, gates long open. But painted murals of animals remain faded by dust and sun. A child's drawing of a giraffe waves from a crumbling wall. For a moment it feels like those animals were never real, just myths. But they were real. And maybe one day life will remember how to grow that large again. A question rises in your mind: what defines an animal's worth? Is it size, intelligence, beauty? Or is it simply its ability to continue? You turn toward the poles now, where penguins once waddled and polar bears roamed. Their ice has gone, but beneath the permafrost, microbes stir. Worms curl into sleeping knots, and in some strange corners, frozen frogs twitch, reviving in minute pulses when heat returns for a fleeting hour. Even humans have changed their relationship with animals. Some communities partnered closely with the few remaining species, trading protection for companionship. A mouse might alert a person to condensation. A spider might signal barometric changes. Bonds became practical, sacred even. You imagine someone sitting underground watching a beetle crawl across a table, grateful for its presence. Above all, this dry earth has become a stage for the resilient. Each creature that remains carries with it a kind of quiet genius, a blueprint for survival in a world without rain. And still the question lingers: if water returned, would these animals remember how to be wild again? Would they dance in rain? Would they run? Or have they forgotten the shape of rivers? For now they do not grieve. They adapt. They whisper through the sand. They curl in the coolness. They wait soft as breath. And you too drift onward towards something older than even the animals, the land itself reborn. Now you descend deeper than before, down into the bedrock, the bones of earth. With no water to polish or erode, the land is no longer smoothed by time. Instead, it stands exposed, naked, in its raw geometry. You see the true shape of continents, the jagged seams of tectonic plates, the rough-hewn scars that rivers once softened. Without the wearing whispers of water, rocks no longer crumble, they simply endure. Mountains hold their shape longer. Valleys become static. Canyons no longer stretch deeper. The planet has paused its carving. And yet the earth is far from still. Beneath your feet the crust flexes, breathes, shifts. Without oceans pressing down on the seabed, tectonic activity increases. The weight has been lifted, the pressure changed. Earth adjusts, sometimes with a shiver, sometimes with a roar. You float above an ancient mid-ocean ridge now laid bare. What was once deep under blue waves now basks in harsh sunlight. The ridge is cracked, steaming faintly, still producing new crust. Lava oozes from seams like thick honey, slowly solidifying into rippled rock. Nearby, an old trench gapes like a wound. It once devoured tectonic plates under kilometers of sea. Now it opens to air, and the gases rising from its depths are strange, smelling of sulfur and iron, like the breath of a giant that has slept too long. Do you wonder what secrets lie in these newly exposed places? Pale alien minerals, once hidden beneath pressure, now glitter under your gaze. Crystals form in odd geometries, growing undisturbed. You see basalt columns rising like organ pipes. Marble streaked with ancient algae now fossilized. Salt plains spread wide across former basins, evidence of evaporated seas. And fossils. So many fossils. The absence of water has peeled back layers of time. Skeletons of whales perfectly preserved in desert sand. Coral heads frozen in place. Ancient tree roots twining through shale. A trilobite stares up at you from a rock shelf, its ridged body outlined in chalk. You're walking through a museum with no walls, a time capsule exposed by thirst. But Earth's geology is not just about the past, it responds to the present. You watch a fault line slip along the edge of a now dry lake. A tremor shakes the crust. No tsunami follows, it would need an ocean. But the land reshapes just slightly. A ridge rises where none existed before. Hills fold like dough under invisible fingers. This is how the earth rewrites itself. Even volcanoes behave differently now. With less water in the mantle and crust, explosive eruptions have changed in frequency and character. Steam-driven eruptions, once common, have all but disappeared. But deep plume volcanoes, those rising from hotspots, have become more prominent, their magma unsoftened by water. You hover near a volcanic plain where lava once met ocean. The edges are jagged, not smooth. Lava flowed and hardened in the dry air, forming sharp spiked features known as IA flows. They crunch underfoot, brittle and echoing. The rocks themselves tell stories. You kneel by a chunk of obsidian, black and glossy like forgotten glass. It feels heavier now. Without rain or humidity, even its surface seems sharper, more direct. Geology without water is sharper, harsher, less sculpted, more true. And still, there is beauty. You rise again over an expanse of dried seafloor, now a field of shimmering sediment. Microscopic shells, once drifting plankton, crunch under your passing. Their shapes remain perfect, like snowflakes etched in stone. You wonder how many secrets has the ocean kept until now, how many mountain chains slumbered below the surface unseen, how many rift valleys held continents apart, hidden under tide, now revealed, now vulnerable. The Earth's crust is no longer shielded from the sun. Surface temperatures soar. Without evaporative cooling from lakes and streams, heat lingers. Rocks crack at noon and freeze at night. The planet is experiencing new rhythms, faster erosion in some places, none in others. Without rain, there's no runoff. Without ice, there's no grinding. You ask yourself, is this what Earth looked like before the oceans came? The thought chills you. Perhaps in some distant epoch, this was our home's first face, before clouds wept, before rivers sang. Perhaps water was only ever a visitor. But you know better. The Earth is thirsty now because it remembers the touch of water. Its valleys are shaped by memory, its rocks carved by longing. You pause over a fault line that glows faintly in infrared. Below, the mantle stirs. It still moves, still flows, unchanged by the dryness above. The core burns. The crust drifts. Earth, though dry, is not dead. She sleeps under dust. And you, sleepy traveler, drift onward into the whispering canyons of wind. Now you rise into the sky where once clouds roamed like herds of white beasts across a cerulean pasture. But they're gone now. You search the horizon and find only streaks, ghosts of what once was smudges in a sky that now rarely weeps. Without water, the atmosphere has changed. It no longer holds the scent of ozone after rain, no more the hush before a thunderstorm. The air feels thinner, drier, lighter, like parchment that's been left out too long. You wonder what happens to weather when all the water is gone. The short answer, it fades. But the long answer is more haunting. You drift into the upper atmosphere, past the lazy circling of wind currents. The water cycle, once a majestic engine of global motion, has sputtered out. No more evaporation from oceans, no more condensation into clouds, no precipitation to nourish the land below. The sky is no longer a story of water. It's a canvas of heat and dust. Without clouds, daytime heat pours onto the surface unchecked. Temperatures spike, scorching at noon, then plummeting at night. There's no humidity to buffer the swing, a cruel rhythm like breath without lungs. And yet the wind still plays. You follow a jet stream still slicing across continents at high altitude. With no clouds to ride along, it moves naked, visible only through how it bends light, how it sweeps dust in vast arcs across the globe. Deserts breathe out heat, and the wind carries it. Dust from the former Sahara coats ancient cities across the Mediterranean. Spores, pollen, ash, still suspended, still swirling. A dry ballet. In some places the skies have turned pale yellow, in others bruised purple. The atmosphere holds fewer particles of water vapor, so light scatters differently. The sunsets, though dry, are strangely electric orange, as embers blue as sorrow. But you miss the sound. There are no more rolling thunderclaps, no pattering on rooftops. Lightning, once born from turbulent clouds, is rare now. When it does appear, it's silent, like a strobe without sound. The storms are gone, but dust devils dance across the plains. You follow one, now small, mischievous, spiraling over cracked ground. It lifts pebbles into a lazy vortex before collapsing. You smile. It's nature's last little joke. But not all weather is gone. Extreme heat still churns the air into motion. You hover above a once temperate forest where towering heat columns now rise daily, pulling warm air skyward in shimmering pulses. These thermals feed wind patterns that cross entire continents. And sometimes those winds converge. Without the dampening effect of clouds and rain, windstorms become more intense. Tornadoes, once fed by clashing air masses, now emerge from pure imbalance, hot and dry versus less hot and dry. They carry no rain, only dust, debris, memory. You drift through one, now gently, of course. Its spiral spins like a dancer, arms raised in a salute to a forgotten sky. It doesn't rage, it remembers. The air pressure across the globe has also shifted. With no ocean currents to stabilize, temperature pressure systems stagnate. In some places, the high-pressure zones never move. Winds circle them endlessly. Elsewhere, the air grows so still, you could balance a feather upright. You might wonder, do the poles still breathe? Without snow, the polar regions reflect more light, albedo, unchecked radiating heat back into space. But with no atmospheric moisture, there's less insulation. The poles swing between boiling sun and freezing night, their ancient rhythm shattered. Weather, it turns out, is a story water tells the sky. Without it, the sky speaks in silence. You float higher above what once were monsoon zones, where billions once relied on seasonal rain to grow food, to drink, to live. Now the land below is baked, scarred by decades without a drop. Once the monsoon was a wild heartbeat, sometimes generous, sometimes cruel, but always present. Now it has gone still. You look east. Typhoons once rolled in from oceans, spinning wide like silver coins tossed by the moon. Without ocean heat to feed them, they vanished. The moon still pulls, but the dance partner is missing. But even now in the silence, the sky waits. It remembers how to rain. High above you spot a lonely cloud seed, a fragment of dust wrapped in hope. If just a few drops of vapor gathered, if just a hint of condensation sparked around it, it might grow. Just one cloud. And where one forms another, could follow. Perhaps in a distant future, when Earth is ready, the cycle could return. But for now, you move through dry thermals and warm updrafts, sailing on a planet where weather is memory. You think, what did the rain feel like on your face? What did it smell like, those first drops on hot asphalt, that petrichor perfume from soil? Would you even recognize the sound of a storm if it returned? You drift down again, where the air is thick with silence and stories unspoken. And ahead lies something even older than sky, the fossil rivers, dry arteries of Earth's once living pulse. Below you now stretches a strange kind of map, etched not in ink or pixels, but in bone-dry scars that once pulsed with life. These are the fossil rivers winding like forgotten veins across a desiccated Earth. They no longer flow, no longer sing, yet their shapes remain carved into stone, visible from orbit, still whispering. You trace the ghost of the Nile. It winds across the baked landscape, its once mighty course, now filled with sand and silence. But the path is unmistakable, as if Earth itself still dreams of where water used to run. You drift low along its bed over sun-bleached pebbles that once tumbled in fresh currents. They are smooth, worn by a past that no longer exists. And yet you feel the motion of it even without water. The channel remembers how to carry. It curves through canyons that still echo even empty. You ask yourself, what happens to a river when it loses its soul? The Amazon is a memory now too, but you can still follow its route across South America, a broad ribbon of sediment and dried oxbow lakes. The rainforest that once depended on its breath has thinned into savanna, then shriveled into plain. But beneath the soil, deep in the strata, moisture still hides. Ancient aquifers trapped before the last drop, vanished, now lie under lock and key. Some still trickle millimeter by millimeter, a kind of deep-time drip. You wonder, could they someday awaken? Further east, the Ganges Valley is painted in silt, a pale outline of a once sacred river. Temples still stand along its route, some overgrown with moss, others half sunk in dunes. The people are gone, but the reverence remains. You sense it in the stone carvings, the care etched into every step. These riverbeds aren't just absences, they're stories. You pass dry deltas where channels once branched like lungs feeding wetlands, nurturing fishbirds, humans. Now they sprawl like skeletons across coastlines that no longer meet the sea. Even underground rivers like those that once flowed through limestone caverns have ceased. You descend into one, now a vast, cathedral-like cave where water once sculpted every wall. Stalactites still drip, but slower than time. A single drop falls every few years. The echo rings like a bell. You float through this stone cathedral and wonder how long will these rivers be remembered? How long can a memory persist without movement? Then you find something miraculous, a crevice, a forgotten pocket in a mountain fold. Inside, in the shadows, a pool, tiny, shallow, only a few meters across. But wet, real, a relic. Its surface quivers slightly from the wind entering the cave. Around its edges, moss clings in stubborn hope. A single insect skims across. You barely breathe. How did it survive? Perhaps fed by a crack in the rock, a slow trickle from glacial memory. Perhaps just luck. You feel a quiet awe settle over you. It's not just rivers. Lakes, too, have left their outlines, some as vast as seas. The Aral Sea, already fading before Earth dried, is now a basin of dust. Lake Baikal's bed exposes fossils, tree trunks, even lost tools. The Great Lakes, a series of vast bowls rimmed with ridges, holding nothing but wind and time. You skim across their beds, feet inches above, cracked clay and forgotten piers. The rivers may be gone, but they shaped everything. Valleys, floodplains, the movement of animals, the placement of cities. Even now, ancient settlements huddle close to dry channels, their bones align with the banks forever tethered to water's memory. Geologists call these features paleochannels, dry maps of where water once was. In some places, satellites reveal them through heat signatures, cooler paths that once held moisture. They lie beneath sand dunes, beneath farmlands, beneath cities. The earth hides its thirst under layers of sediment. You pass over one such channel beneath the Sahara, an ancient river larger than the Mississippi. It ran for hundreds of miles, now sealed under desert. And yet, there's something almost alive about its shape, the way it curls, as though still flowing beneath your gaze. And you wonder, is there water, still locked beneath these fossil veins? Could we someday tap them, awaken them? Or are they better left as memories? There is a gentleness to dry rivers, a kind of peaceful defeat. They do not rage, they do not beg, they simply remain as evidence. You drift over the Colorado River's empty path. Canyons dry, the Hoover Dam quiet. The bridges still stand but cross only sand. No boat has passed in decades, but the echo of them still lingers. You hear it in the breeze. Or perhaps it's just your own breath sinking with the rhythm that once was. What would it take to bring a river back more than water? It would take time, trust, patience, an entire planet willing to soften again. Until then, the rivers sleep, and so do you, gliding gently along the spine of an ancient current. You drift now toward the old coasts, the places where water once kissed land again and again, like the tick of a celestial metronome. Without oceans, these coastlines have become wrinkles in the skin of Earth, marked by abrupt cliffs, long-forgotten dunes, and sea-smooth stones that haven't heard a wave in centuries. You trace the jagged edge of what was once the Pacific shore. Beaches remain, but they are dry, brittle. The sand has stopped shifting its grains, no longer rounded by tides. They lie still, glittering like tiny shards of memory under a sun that no longer reflects off waves. And yet, the beach still smells faintly of salt. The rocks remember the sea. Tide pools have become stone bowls, their tiny ecosystems long gone. Barnacles clutch the sides like miniature fossils. A crab shell sits frozen in time, bleached and hollow. Kelp lies twisted like dried ribbon, its colors muted by endless sun. You wonder, what does it feel like to be a shoreline with nothing to touch, to wait eternally for a wave that will never return. The Earth's great coastal cities, built lovingly along bays and harbors, now perch awkwardly at the edge of nothing. You pass San Francisco, where the Golden Gate Bridge stretches over a vast plain instead of water. Ships once glided beneath. Now the bridge spans a wind-scoured ravine, echoing with emptiness. New York's piers lead to mud. Sydney's Opera House faces a cracked basin. Tokyo's bay is a dry scoop of salt and silt, glimmering faintly like broken glass. You float above it all, silent as a shadow. In some places, tectonic activity has exposed what once lay hidden below sea-level continental shelves, now open to sky. They are broad, flat, eerie. You imagine the marine creatures that once danced here in the dappled light beneath the waves. Now only their traces remain. You notice grooves etched deep into the seafloor paths, once carved by glaciers sliding over submerged stone, or by ocean currents that swirled for millennia. Without water, they look like fingerprints, the unique biography of Earth's watery past. Here, too, the absence of tides has shifted everything. The moon, though still circling above in her patient silence, no longer pulls on the water that isn't there. The gentle push and pull that once breathed life into the coasts is gone, and with it the rhythm of marine life. Without tides, coral reefs dried and cracked like fallen bread crust. Estuaries collapsed into dust bowls. Mudflats hardened into concrete-like plains, cracked like puzzles you're not meant to solve. But the shapes remain, and the stories hidden in silt and sediment are rich with meaning. You pause over a shelf once part of the North Sea. Long before even the oceans, we knew humans walked this land, Doggerland they called it, a bridge between what would become the British Isles and mainland Europe. Now it rises again. The bones of mammoths lie beside flint tools. The seafloor has become a museum, sunlit for the first time in 10,000 years. The drowned forests stand upright once more, their stumps weathered but proud. You sense a soft defiance in them, and perhaps a readiness. For even in this dryness, there are seeds buried deep, grains of salt-tolerant grass, algae spores fossilized, shells filled with the potential of return, if only the conditions were right. Coastal caves, once home to crashing waves, are now filled with still air and the echo of seabirds long gone. But their walls carry paintings, salt lines, mineral crusts, even early human carvings. Stories from a time when water defined life. You may find yourself asking, what happens to an ocean when it leaves? Does it take everything with it, or does it leave behind something we've yet to notice? You float over the Mariana Trench, the deepest wound in the Earth's surface. Without the crushing weight of water, its true form is finally visible. It is a yawning chasm, black and cold, so deep the sunlight barely scratches its surface even now. Its walls are carved with pressure scars. Its bottom is a desert silt ash, and the bones of deep-sea creatures preserved like forgotten myths. You feel as though you're gazing into the universe, turned upside down, and still, it waits, because even in this dry world, the contours of the past remain. Every inlet, every fjord, every cove, they all remember. You pass a sea arch hollowed out by waves that no longer roar. A seaside cliff still carries nests in its cracks, although the seabirds have long since gone quiet. The world is quieter now. Still, but not lifeless. Not yet. Somewhere buried deep beneath old coral beds, something stirs. Bacteria, spores, tiny forms of life sealed off from the sun, biding their time. waiting like all of Earth for the return of the tide. You glance once more toward the horizon, where blue once met blue, and feel a phantom splash of water across your skin. A memory, a wish, a story Earth still tells in the shape of her shores. You float now toward what once dominated Earth's face, more than any other feature the great sprawling oceans. They were never just voids between continents. They were worlds of their own, deeper than mountains are tall, more mysterious than the dark side of the moon. Now without a single drop left, they lie exposed, naked, monumental. You descend toward the empty basin of the Pacific. It is almost unfathomably vast. Over 60 million square miles of once churning sea, now transformed into a sun-baked bowl of ancient ridges and yawning trenches. The Mariana, the Tonga, the Kermadec all laid bare. Cracks in Earth's crust that once trembled beneath thousands of feet of water now echo silently under an open sky. Here Earth's skeleton is showing. Volcanoes that once peaked from beneath the waves stand now as jagged towers on a plain of dried abyss. The mid-ocean ridge which once spread continents apart, like the seams of an ever-growing ball, now snakes visibly across the ocean floor, an endless serpentine mountain range no longer hidden. You wonder, what does the ocean floor feel like when it breathes in air for the first time in 4 billion years? You pass long lines of black smokers, hydrothermal vents, once teeming with alien life in complete darkness. Their chimneys, now cold and dry, reach toward you like the broken organ pipes of a cathedral that's lost its song. And still, they hold on to secrets. Fossilized tube worms, frozen colonies of archaea remnants of a life that never needed sunlight. How strange that life may have started here in these depths, and now paused. As you rise along an ancient ridge, you see the silt layered like pages in a book written by the slow hand of time. It's a kind of deep-sea diary. Volcanic ash, microscopic shells, plastic fragments are modern age, preserved alongside ancient ones. You float past the Challenger Deep, and it feels like looking into Earth's subconscious. In the absence of water, sound travels differently. Your mind fills the void. You imagine whale songs that once echoed here, blue and low, haunting and eternal. You almost expect to hear them again, but only silence greets you. And that silence is heavy. As you move west, you pass over what was once the Indian Ocean. A crossroads of tectonic plates, its basin is split with ancient scars from continental drift. Crustal fractures spread like delicate spiderwebs, marking where India once tore from Antarctica. Without water, these seams look almost surgical evidence of Earth constantly rebuilding herself. You ask yourself, with no oceans, does Earth stop changing? But the plates still shift. They grind. They rumble. Earth still dreams in earthquakes. You come across old undersea mountain chains, once islands, now stranded plateaus. The Seychelles Plateau, once half-submerged, now bakes under an unforgiving sun. Its corals are stone. Its shores are dust. Yet you see shapes, reef skeletons, etched like lace into the rock. Even without water, beauty persists. You travel next to the floor of the Atlantic, long and narrow, like the space between two reaching hands. The mid-Atlantic ridge rises proudly, a reminder that continents still drift apart in slow, ceaseless motion. Iceland, now landlocked, appears awkward and dry, yet volcanic steam still hisses from cracks as if reluctant to accept this new age. The basins that once birthed hurricanes are now dead calm. No warmth, no moisture. The sky above is vast and clear, too clear. The sun feels closer here, unfiltered by the ocean's cooling breath. In the past, the ocean absorbed carbon-regulated temperature, supported weather and life. Without it, Earth has grown volatile and unstable. The atmosphere is thinner, hotter, sadder somehow. And yet, on the surface of these dried oceans, patterns remain. Ripple marks created by waves and currents still decorate the seabed as if the water had just left moments ago. You reach out. The sand is firm, but the ridges are sharp, unbroken. Even time has tread carefully here. You pause over what was once the Sargasso Sea, a strange still part of the Atlantic, once surrounded by four great ocean currents. It hosted floating mats of sargassum, golden and alive, a whole floating ecosystem. Now those currents have ceased, and the seaweed lies dry and brittle, tangled like brittle yarn across the sea floor. But the memories remain. You picture eels migrating here from Europe, driven by instinct, written in DNA older than language. They came to spawn in secret, vanishing into the deep. They're gone now, but their path still lingers, like a ghost road across a forgotten land. Do oceans remember the things that swam in them? Do the shells miss their crabs? Do the reefs remember the shimmer of silver fish? These questions float with you as you glide toward what was once the Southern Ocean. The water here was always cold, dark, rich with life. It circled Antarctica in a powerful current, churning nutrients from the depths, feeding whales and penguins and everything in between. Now that mighty conveyor belt has stopped. But the ridges and trenches it carved remain like sacred text. You feel reverence here, deep, slow awe. And you realize the oceans have not vanished. They have only shifted. Their bodies are gone, yes, but their shapes, their scents, their rhythms, they linger. In every carved trench, every fossilized coral, every ripple in the dust. The oceans, like memories, have become part of Earth's skin, and as you rise upward, leaving the vast open plain of what was once the seafloor, you carry a question with you. Can a planet still be whole without its oceans? Or is it like a song with no melody recognizable but empty? You rise into the air again, the seafloor receding below. Dry, grand, still echoing. Now you begin to see Earth as a whole, again, from above, from a quiet perch in the twilight, between sunlight and shadow. No longer examining her piece by piece, but drifting far enough to observe her entire body. And from this distance you can finally see what has changed most of all, her color. The planet that was once so famously blue is now painted in rust and bone. No oceans, no shimmer, no clouds dancing on waves. Earth wears a new face, a canvas of cracked lake beds, exposed continental shelves, and fossilized rivers tracing every continent like veins on an ancient hand. She's still beautiful, but now hauntingly so. You turn slowly orbiting. You see where ice once crowned the poles. Antarctica, once bright and blinding, is now the color of ash. Its glaciers long melted or collapsed. Greenland, too, lies dark and silent, its secrets finally exposed. Once hidden beneath kilometers of frozen time, it now shows ancient canyons and lakes no eye had ever seen before. The last ice melted thousands of years ago. And yet the outline of glaciers remains grooves carved deep into mountains, U-shaped valleys that look as though they were drawn with a gentle fingertip. Earth remembers every glacier, as if each one was a lover who stayed a little too long and left quietly in the night. Without water to regulate her temperature, Earth's climate has spun into strange new rhythms. Deserts now cover most continents. Even temperate zones have shifted. Seasons are less defined. Rain is a rare visitor when it comes. It is brief, timid. Most clouds no longer gather because there's little left to draw them up from the land. Even the wind has changed its tone. You imagine what a breeze feels like now, dry, sun-warmed, sometimes tinged with salt or dust carried from an ocean bed long gone. And still it sings, whispers between mountain passes, rattles dry reeds that never reach water, brushes against stones that once stood below the surf. Earth hasn't stopped breathing. She just breathes differently now. You wonder, could something adapt to this? Could a creature learn to live here, not just survive, but thrive? In a world without surface water, life would have to hide. Underground, perhaps deep in ancient aquifers or in the coolness of caves. Fungi, extremophile bacteria, creatures with slow pulses and long sleep cycles. Their lives measured not in hours or days, but in centuries. And you begin to see signs of it. A patch of moss tucked beneath the ledge of a canyon wall, a puff of spores drifting from a crack where humidity lingers. Beetles with shells so thick they look like pebbles hiding from the heat. They scuttle through dry leaves, finding shade in the shadows of forgotten things. Earth hasn't stopped living. She's just changed the tempo. Her song has slowed, drawn out like the final notes of a lullaby. And then you begin to notice something even more surprising. Green, tiny bursts of it, dots here and there like freckles on dry skin, small groves nestled into crevices, vines curling inside an old sinkhole, ferns clinging to canyon walls where mist occasionally settles. These aren't just remnants, they're beginnings. They are return. A hint of a seed that survived, a root that kept reaching. And below the surface, water still exists, trapped in stone stored in aquifers frozen in permafrost. A sleeping reservoir, maybe not enough to flood oceans again, but enough to start over. You ask yourself, if the water ever came back, would Earth know how to catch it? Would the rivers find their beds again? Would the lakes remember their edges? Would forests recognize the feeling of rain? You float further, passing over ancient floodplains, now dry as parchment. The Mississippi Valley, the Ganges Delta, the Yangtze River Basin. Each one lies like an open palm, inviting waiting dreaming. And then high in the Andes you spot something astonishing. A cloud, just one. It coils lazily around a peak like a shawl tossed gently across a shoulder. Where did it come from? Perhaps a pocket of rising moisture. A thermal wind, a quirk of the landscape. It doesn't matter. It's here. And as the sun hits it, the cloud glows. It casts a small shadow on the cracked earth below, and that simple gesture, the gift of shade, feels profound, as if Earth herself is remembering, practicing, rehearsing the steps of the water cycle in the mirror, just in case it ever returns. From this height, Earth looks lonely, but not hopeless. Her rivers are fossilized, her lakes exposed, her oceans laid bare. But the shape of water is still everywhere, waiting, resting. Perhaps it's not an ending at all, just a long pause. You drift onward quietly, watching as Earth turns slowly beneath you. Dust curls across valleys like smoke. The sun paints warm colors across canyons that once echoed with water. And beneath it all, in cracks, in corners, in caves, life waits. You begin to glide downward, now slow and drifting toward the places where water once moved with power and purpose, where rivers carved, thundered, flooded, whispered. These were Earth's veins pulsing with meltwater and mountain runoff feeding every landscape they passed. But now, the rivers have fallen silent. You follow the ancient path of the Amazon first, the largest river system the world ever knew, once carrying more water than the next 7 largest rivers combined. Its width could stretch over 24 miles in flood season. But tonight, in this dry version of Earth, it is a winding canyon. Deep, cracked, veined with silt and the ghosts of oxbow lakes. You float above its empty bed, and it feels like flying over a scar, beautiful but sobering. The once mighty Amazon no longer hums with the buzz of insects, the chatter of birds, the gurgle of a million tributaries. Instead, its floor is littered with petrified tree trunks, now upright again like statues in some long-forgotten garden. Roots curl outward, exposed and reaching for moisture that no longer rises. And yet, the shape remains, the bends, the curves, the soft elbow where a river once hesitated before turning east, the cliffs it undercut, the bluffs it kissed and carried grain by grain all the way to the Atlantic's edge. Next you travel north, tracing the Mississippi. Once called the father of waters, it now sleeps beneath a thick blanket of dust and cracked clay. Barges lie rusted on their sides like stranded whales. Bridges which once arched over currents and commerce now rise awkwardly above a dry trench. Their reflection is gone. Their purpose feels uncertain. You wonder, do rivers dream of the rain? Do they remember the pull of gravity guiding them, the swell of snowmelt in spring, the rush of flash floods in summer? You drift eastward following the spine of the Nile. This river was never just water. It was civilization. The heartbeat of Egypt, the ribbon of life in a land of sand. Without it, the deserts have grown bold, reclaiming old farmland, burying roads. The valley where the Nile once flowed is now a corridor of stone. Pyramids sit in stillness, not far from dry harbors and empty irrigation canals. Their grandeur undimmed, but now wrapped in silence. And yet along the edges palms still stand. Their roots stretch deep, reaching into the bedrock searching. Somewhere far beneath pockets of groundwater remain. Ancient, sacred, waiting. You pause to notice something unusual. A spring, tiny, almost invisible. But there it is, a bead of water seeping from a shaded cliff, glinting like a secret. It trickles down a groove, carving a threadbare line into the dust. It's not a river, no, but it remembers how to flow. And that feels like hope. You follow old deltas next. The Ganges-Brahmaputra Delta, once among the richest and most complex wetland systems in the world, now lies like a dried watercolor painting. Channels fork and twist into nothing. Once so alive with life, mangroves, crocodiles, drifting lilies, it now hums only with the whisper of wind through reeds made brittle by drought. You ask yourself, is a river only a river when it carries water? Or does it exist as long as the possibility of water remains? You drift west, past the Rhine, the Seine, the Danube, all shadows of themselves. And then toward the Yellow River in China, the cradle of Chinese civilization. Its silt once gave life to entire empires. Without its current, that golden silt now lies still, forming soft dunes beneath a yellow sun. In its stillness, you see memory. Every curve carved by floods, every terrace carved by hand. The earth wears these traces like jewelry, faded, yes, but never forgotten. Now further south, you follow the Mekong through what was once lush Indochina. Temples dot its banks, silent now. But carvings on their stone walls show stories of the river, spirits, serpents, boats gliding like dragonflies. These people knew the river. They loved it. They shaped their lives to its rhythm. Even the architecture still faces east toward the dawn and the delta. Even without water, it stands in homage. It's here you sense something stirring, a change in the air. Humidity. Maybe. The land feels heavier, thicker. You pass over dry waterfalls, Niagara, Victoria, Iguazu, places once roaring with power, now sculptures of erosion. Their cliff faces bare, polished by ages of flow, now standing like stage curtains, waiting for the orchestra to return. And below the old plunge pools, puddles, not many, just a few. But their surface is smooth, cool, reflecting sky. You realize the planet is not entirely dry. Somewhere in caves, in reservoirs, in rocks, water persists, quietly, patiently, as if Earth herself is safeguarding the recipe, even if the ingredients are scarce. You can almost hear her whisper, "Not yet, but someday." You glide onward, the network of rivers behind you now, like dried roots. Complex, beautiful, waiting. Because rivers aren't just paths for water, they are maps of memory. Now you rise one last time, just high enough to take in the full sweep of Earth's surface, not from the distant cold of space, but from the height of a mountain's sigh. From here, the shapes of continents feel almost familiar again. You see valleys, craters, escarpments, signatures of motion, erosion life, and you begin to notice something striking, how much of Earth's design has been shaped by water, even now that it's gone. Without a single drop left to lap against a shore or cling to a leaf, water still defines everything you see. The edges of continents, the gentle curve of a bay, the reaching tip of a peninsula, each one drawn by waves over millennia. The jagged, folded landscapes of fjords, now empty, still retain their glacier-carved grace. Even mountain ranges hold reminders, streams long gone, that once traced the ridges like necklaces of ice and time. Water might be absent, but its fingerprints are everywhere. You drift down through what used to be the rainforest belt, where clouds were once born in hot green breath. The trees are mostly gone now, but beneath the dust, you see their imprint root systems fossilized in place, spreading like veins through once rich soil. Fungal threads still stretch through the dark earth below, carrying whispers of memory and moisture. And then, just ahead, something extraordinary. A salt flat, vast, blinding, beautiful. This is the ghost of a lake, an inland sea that once shimmered with life, now transformed into a mirror of sky. The surface is smooth and crystalline, fractured into perfect hexagons. It crunches softly under imagined feet like old snow. You almost expect a breeze to kick up waves, but none come. Yet it feels alive. Each flake of salt once dissolved in an ocean, a lake, a tear. Every crystal remembers flow. You bend closer, and embedded in the cracks you spot tiny threads, strands of ancient algae locked in place like green stardust. Microbes that once bloomed with the sun's rise now lie in elegant stillness, their chemistry frozen, but not forgotten. And suddenly you wonder if the water ever returns. Will they bloom again? You drift into Earth's deserts now, once arid, now endless. But even here the past speaks. Dried lake beds sprawl in delicate ovals, their edges still rimmed with the fine crust of evaporated minerals. Fossilized fish lie nestled in dusty gullies, their skeletons arranged as though paused mid-swim. And you realize this desert too was once a sea. The Sahara, the Outback, the Atacama. Every one of them has tasted water. You begin to hear Earth differently now, not in the language of tides or thunder, but in a softer rhythm, the shifting of silt, the gentle collapse of clay, the quiet exhale of air, escaping a rock fissure warmed by sun. It's a subtler music, but no less beautiful. And in this hush, something else becomes clear. Without water, Earth becomes timeless. Things erode slower, colors fade more slowly, even sound moves with hesitation. It's as if the planet herself has taken a long, measured breath and decided to hold it, just to see what silence feels like. And in this breath, life holds its breath too. But water never truly disappears. It seeps, it clings, it hides, locked in crystal, bound in mineral, encased in permafrost, floating even now as vapor in the highest layers of air. It is scattered but not lost, and deep below the crust, Earth still brews her own moisture. Mantle plumes that rise from the deep carry pockets of water that never saw the sun. They wait in magma, in rock, in darkness. Like seeds in winter soil, they bide their time. And maybe, just maybe, one day when Earth turns a new page, that moisture will rise again, to form clouds, to spill as rain, to refill rivers and lakes and oceans. And when it does, the land will remember how to hold it. The rivers will find their beds, the coral will open its arms, the melody will return, and you will remember this quiet version of Earth not as her ending, but as her pause, her gentle sleep before the dreaming begins again. And now your journey through this dry, dreaming Earth begins to soften. The shapes you've seen, the canyons and ocean basins, the braided riverbeds and salt flats begin to blur like a watercolor left out in the rain. You can feel yourself floating slower now, as if the air itself has thickened slightly, tucking you in with a whisper of warmth. Your mind drifts back to the sound of waves, even though none were present. Strange, isn't it? How vividly silence can echo. You carry the shapes with you, the ghost of a river, the cradle of an empty lake, the crackle of a salt underfoot. You carry the idea that nothing is ever truly gone, that even in the absence of water, Earth still remembers how to welcome it home. So you rest now, eyes heavy, thoughts slow. You imagine clouds gathering quietly over a dusty plain, one drop falling, then another, and gentle as breath, patient as time. And in that stillness, a world waits. If you've enjoyed this journey, I'd be quietly grateful if you'd give this video a like or tap that subscribe button for more peaceful explorations with the Sleepy Scientist. It helps more than you might imagine. And before you drift off, I'd still love to know, where in the world are you listening? From what time it is there? Leave a comment if you're feeling cozy enough to share. It's always a quiet joy to see this sleepy little community ripple across time zones and continents. Good night, sweet dreams.